The matchup between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump is the wackiest U.S. race of our lifetimes. It isn't helping the economy. Development was at that point off to allow the begin in 2016. Specialists anticipated a late spring bounce back. However, in this way, decision concerns are developing and the monetary gauges are slacking. Ultimately, what will determine whether we have a recession next year is the comfort level Americans have with who occupies the White House in 2017, says Bernard Baumol, chief global economist at the Economic Outlook Group. Right now, that comfort level is low. Most voters don't like Clinton or Trump, according to unfavorability ratings in the polls. In corporate America, there's alarm at how tight the race is now. Many believe Clinton would be better for the economy than Trump, but even with Clinton, CEOs have concerns about how friendly she will be toward businesses. Just take a look at what CEOs of America's top companies are saying lately. U.S. businesses are concerned. Nearly 20% of the S&P 500 companies mentioned the presidential election in their latest quarterly earnings call as a red flag. It seems as though every time things begin to settle, something else happens, like Brexit or the dynamics of the upcoming U.S. election. To underscore that there's nothing normal about the new normal, there's a presidential election. I think has some very unique characteristics that could be affecting the mindset of middle America consumers, said Signet Jewelers CEO Mark Light on August 25. I think the election here in the United States is a level of uncertainty that's probably unsettling consumers right now, said Arthur Peck, CEO of Gap GPS on September 7. The Trump wild card. A simple recipe powers the U.S. economy. People and businesses have to go buy stuff. Then they do. America prospers. Then they don't. America suffers. The great fear is that the chaos of the election will cause Americans to keep their wallets shut. It's already happening among CEOs. Yes. Businesses are still hiring workers. U.S. job openings are at the record high, but companies aren't spending much on new equipment and research. This isn't a totally new phenomenon. Research shows a slowdown in so-called capital expenditures is common in election years. But Trump is a wild card that's arguably making businesses even more cautious. A candidate like Donald Trump is the mother of all uncertainties, says Baumol. Businesses don't like to make huge investments in uncertain times. Growth was already slow in 2016. America's economy only grew 1% in the first half of the year, well below the historic average of over 3% and even below the not-so-great 2.4% rate of the past 2 years. A lot of that sluggish growth is blamed on companies holding back on big purchases because of the energy sector slump and Brexit. Now the U.S. election is on everyone's minds. The election, or the circus, that is being played out is certainly not helping the economy, says economist Ed Yardeni, president of Yardeni Research. In August, Clinton held a sizable lead. But Trump is the ultimate wild card. The usual models don't seem to fully capture the Trump effect. The race is now again neck and neck in key swing states. Will Americans keep spending? The question is whether the American shoppers are also getting spooked. Business spending is important, but individual spending makes up the bulk, nearly 70%, of the U.S. economy. So far this year, consumers have been the bright spot. Americans aren't spending quite as much as the lush pre-recession days, but they still shopping online and in some stores. Consumer confidence has rebounded to the highest levels since the crisis. But in August, retail sales came in far lower than expected. It could just be a blip, or the beginning of deeper concern moving from businesses to Main Street. Between now and the election, CEOs and consumers will scale back spending, especially if polls show the race is a tight one, predicts Baumol of the Economic Outlook Group. The bottom line is the U.S. and global economies were already in a mediocre state. The Trump v. Clinton election is only adding to the list of concerns. The Federal Reserve is expected to hold off on raising interest rates today because of the unease, although the Federal doesn't like to admit it takes U.S. politics into account. It's only one more ingredient, but, unfortunately, it's an ingredient in a very poor stew, says Swak of DS Economics. Clinton far better for economy than Trump. Economists think Hillary Clinton in the White House would be far better for U.S. businesses than Donald Trump. In fact, economists pick Libertarian candidate Garrett Johnson as their second choice, according to a new survey from the National Association for Business Economics of over 400 experts. Trump comes in third. The majority, 55%, choose Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, followed distantly by Libertarian nominee Garrett Johnson 15% and Republican nominee Donald Trump 14%, says Lavorthan Henry of the NABE. The remaining 15% said they don't know. The results are another sign of how Trump is struggling to connect with the business community despite touting his own record as a business titan. Trump's push to restrict trade and immigration are exactly the opposite of what most economists say the U.S. should be doing to boost growth. Trump promises to cut taxes for companies. He wants to reduce the corporate tax rate from 35% to 15%. It's a move that has typically played well with businesses. But this election, economists worry about the bigger picture. Immigration is a top issue for the business economist. 61% of the NABE survey respondents said the U.S. needs to allow more immigration, especially for workers with top skills. Clinton has a plan to increase highly skilled immigration, the so-called H-1B visa program. She also wants to create a route to citizenship for immigrants in the U.S. illegally. A large majority of economists, 65%, also say the next president has to be more open to free trade, exactly the opposite of what Trump has been preaching on the campaign trail. Related, Hillary Clinton's economic plan. Trump has been clear that he thinks America is a loser on trade and that the U.S. needs to fight back against China, Mexico and others. There are concerns that the hefty tariffs he wants to put on goods coming to the U.S. from China and Mexico would cause a trade war in addition to make a lot of products more expensive for Americans. NABE surveyed over 414 economists who work in all different industries, from construction to finance, from July 20 to August 2. While NABE members favor Clinton to lead the economy, they say overall uncertainty from this election is holding back U.S. economic growth. Trump once had a sizable lead over Clinton when voters were asked which candidate would be better at handling the economy. That has evaporated after the conventions.